Welcome viewers, Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist, New South Wales, Australia, and I've decided to, as far as I can, rerun the Australian Royal Commission videos on the channel. I just don't want people to forget what happened back there. Obviously, the Jehovah Witnesses are pretty ignorant of the Australian Royal Commission. So I'm going to do everything I can to try and run these videos. It's going to be lengthy, but I want to open it with Barbara Anderson's Watchtower documents. I'll put the link below. The Australian Royal Commission by Barbara Anderson. An Australian Royal Commission held formal public hearings to examine evidence about child sexual abuse within religious and charitable organisations in that country, in Australia, in my country. There are over 30 of these ongoing investigations involving a large number of religions and charities. Each public hearing examined a number of individual case studies involving different public and private organisations. Jehovah Witnesses were among the religious organisations being investigated. The Commission wanted to know specifically how Jehovah Witnesses and the Watchtower Society responded to allegations of child abuse involving members of their congregations. In 2015, the Royal Commission's public hearings involving Jehovah Witnesses were scheduled and heard in Sydney starting on Monday, July the 27th and continued through to August 14th, 2015. The intent of the hearings was to investigate the actual practices and policies of the Jehovah Witnesses and Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Australia Limited in situations of reported and suspected child abuse or endangerment. Following up hearings were scheduled for spring 2017 to review the Watchtower of Australia's policy changes and plans for corrective action. 2017. On March 10, 2017, the Commission held follow-up hearings to hear the Watchtower representatives' descriptions of any corrective actions taken by the Australian branch of Jehovah Witnesses over the past 18 months. More than 5 hours of sessions, the Commission was not satisfied and clearly disappointed with the testimony and voiced their displeasure with the efforts and official responses by the Watchtower branch representatives. Now that's serious. You can follow this link if you want to hear the hearings. And I'm going to put these hearings up in this rerun of the Australian Royal Commission program. The scope and purpose of the hearings were to inquire into the experiences of survivors of child sexual abuse within the Jehovah Witness Church in Australia, the response of the Jehovah Witness Church and the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Australia Limited to allegations, reports or complaints of child sexual abuse within the church, the systems, policies and procedures in place within the Jehovah Witnesses Church and the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Australia Limited for raising and responding to allegations of or concerns about child sexual abuse within the church, and the systems, policies and procedures in place within the Jehovah Witness Church and the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Australia Limited to prevent child sexual abuse within the church. During and after the hearings, the Commission provided witness lists, transcripts, exhibits, images and associated submissions for each case study and makes them publicly available on the Commission's website. And you can go to that website yourself if you want the evidence. Submissions. After hearing, the Council assisting the Royal Commission will provide witnesses and other people who were granted leave to appear at the hearing a written submission detailing what was discovered during the case study. The submission will outline key findings based on the hearing evidence and the recommendations likely to come from them. The recipients of the submission may then provide their own written submissions in reply. The Commissioners then consider this information and when they form their final recommendations during the course of the Royal Commission. In the articles below you will find videos of the live streams of the public hearings and transcripts of those hearings and complete sets of the exhibits used by the Commission that were provided by those involved in the case. Many of these exhibits have never been publicly available before. And here's some of the stuff you can see. But I'm going to go now to live footage from the Australian Royal Commission on the Jehovah Witnesses, Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, Church organisation. I hope you enjoy this series.
Dr. Applewhite, you're familiar, of course, with the possible or potential outcomes from a judicial committee that might have come to a finding of child sexual abuse having occurred, being essentially a repentance, acceptance of repentance, and therefore removal from position, maybe removal of privileges but staying in the congregation, or disfellowship. Those are the essential outcomes, aren't they?
Essentially.
Yes. So if someone is in the congregation is found to have committed sexual abuse and the judicial committee finds them sufficiently repentant, then they remain in the congregation. Is that right?
Yes.
And if they are not sufficiently repentant, then they will be disfellowshipped, which means they're out of the congregation.
Yes.
And the repentance, of course, would come with an acceptance that they had done what they were accused of having done.
Yes.
Yes. And if the repentant wrongdoer was a wrongdoer in relation to one of his or her own children, they would go back into the family.
As far as I understand, yes.
Unless there was a report to the authorities.
Well, normally yes.
And intervention by the authorities. But insofar as the organisation's own steps are concerned, that would be the ordinary course.
Yes.
And if there was a repentance and then reproval, the reasons for the reproval are not published to the congregation. Is that right?
Yes.
And so the congregation will be left not knowing why this person has been reproved.
If no further activity is occurring, that's right.
Well, further activity, what do you mean?
In some cases, if they're reproved for child abuse, then they would be asked to not spend time with children and not be with them in the Kingdom Hall and things of that nature. If they were displaying behavior that was of that nature, then the procedure would be to warn the families that have children in the congregation.
Well, perhaps particular families in which that person has a relationship or engagement. Is that right?
My understanding was that it would be anyone in the congregation that has minor children.
All right,
that I would have to look at that further.
All right. Well, that may be subject to us looking at it further, but. You accept, and I think you've written or spoken on the subject, you accept that a child abuser, child sexual abuser is unlikely to be able to stop abusing. In other words, once a child abuser, there's likely to be reoffending, not so.
It's a very complicated question, but once somebody abuses, once their internal mechanisms of control have allowed them to cross that line once, I don't have confidence in those internal mechanisms of control for the future.
And so really positive steps need to be taken to ensure that such a person doesn't have access or opportunity.
Yes.
Would that be right? And that ability to take effective child-safe action, given what we've just been through, it doesn't exist in the Jehovah's Witnesses current procedures, does it?
Well, yeah, I don't think it's just the current procedures. I don't think that they have the authority to remove a child from a home.
Well, that certainly. But if the law would require them to report, then they say they would report, not so.
Yes.
But in the absence of such a requirement, then they're not likely to report, certainly not required by their documents to report to child protection authorities.
Their documents say if there's a law that we are mandated to report, we report. And I find that's true for most religious organizations, that in the absence of a mandated reporter requirement, that they often don't report abuse.
Well, that's of course the subject of some other inquiries or case studies within this Royal Commission. Of course, what's required, you agreed earlier, or said earlier, as I understand it, for current best practice is for an organisation to have a strong and effective relationship with child protection authorities.
Yes.
And that's absent in this case, isn't it? In the case of the Jehovah's Witnesses.
I haven't examined particular cases to know whether they're cooperative with authorities or not. And my read of their statements and the statement of the witness from the legal department is that they're instructed to be cooperative with the authorities.
Where the authorities come forward and require them to do so. Not so. I mean, I withdraw that. Let's go back and deal with it at a documentary level. There's nothing that requires or even encourages elders to encourage others to report to the authorities. That's right, isn't it?
What's required is that they are clear that it's the personal decision of the individual whether they're going to report or not.
Yes.
So the word encouraged is not used. I like the word encouraged. That particular word isn't used. What they say is that they should never be discouraged and that they should be clear that it's their right to do so and that nobody's going to criticize them if they go to the authorities.
And you will have picked up through your reading of the policies and documents and teachings and so on, something of an antipathy to the secular authorities. It's a difficult relationship that the Jehovah's Witnesses have with the secular authorities.
I haven't picked that up.
And if that was found to be so, then you would accept, of course, that that element of a strong and constructive relationship is absent.
If it was found that they don't have a strong and constructive relationship, would I accept that they don't have?
No, if it's found that they have a relationship of antipathy with secular authorities, then that component of the best practice would not be met.
I would really have to see what it was that was found before I could say. My read of the documents and the way that the director of the legal department has described the procedures and what the elders are instructed to do sounds to me like he's saying follow the law and cooperate with the authorities. And even in a case where somebody else reported to the authorities to cooperate with them, give them documents as required.
So your opinion on that point is based on what he said in his statement?
What he said in his statement and also the other documents that say we've never discouraged anyone from reporting to the police.
There's no document that says that.
We've never. There's a letter to the elders that says for many years we've encouraged we've told the elders to follow the law.
Yes. Well, that's a different point, isn't it? So to the extent to which that opinion is based on Mr. Toole's statement as to what takes place, then if those aspects of the statement are not accepted by the Royal Commission, then your opinion would have to be revisited in that respect, wouldn't it?
Sure.
Because I'd like to suggest to you that the Jehovah's Witnesses policies and procedures with regard to raising and responding to child sexual abuse allegations are significantly deficient of current best practice.
Currently.
Yes. Do you accept that?
That's your opinion?
No, that is the position. It is. My opinion is irrelevant. I'm suggesting to you that it would be right for this commission to come to the conclusion, based on the evidence and on what you've had to say, that the Jehovah's Witnesses' current policies and procedures with regard to raising and responding to child sexual abuse allegations are deficient when measured against current best practice.
Okay. So when it comes to what they're doing now, I find that much of what they're doing now is consistent with what I see in other religious organizations. If the question is, does it meet all current best practices? I would say it probably doesn't. There could easily be ways that many religious organizations could raise the bar and meet better practices.
Is it right, though, to compare them with other religious organisations, or just what best practice should be, religious, school, or anything else?
I find that the practices in different, for example, the practices in social service organizations tend to move along faster because you have more knowledgeable people who are working in the field. And then you have schools that move along faster. And I find that religious organizations, by and large, move more slowly in developing practices that relate to social services, these particular kinds of social services. So to compare them to, for example, a foster care organization, I wouldn't normally do that. I don't know what this commission will do.
I don't know about whether comparison's the right way to go anyway. Isn't the object of all of this for us to try and work out and tell all institutions, whatever, this is the practice you should follow, not what the best religious practice is, this is the practice you should follow.
I absolutely hope that that's the outcome. I mean, that's what I'm hoping for. And so that if we came here 5 years from now and someone said, what would you point to for the standard of care? I would say, look at the recommendations that came out of the World Commission. I mean, that to me is the hope. And that there would be certain practices that would be across the board, no matter who the person is or no matter what the organization is, but then certain things that would relate specifically to different types of organizations.
Well, as we were talking about the issue before lunch, as to the requirements of the judicial hearing procedure, you and I had a discussion about that, you remember. There's a fundamental problem there, isn't there, with the way it's constituted under the current provided procedure.
The way that what is constituted?
The 2 men, then 3 men, then the survivor having to tell their story without moral support with the accused present. That process we talked about before lunch, and we agreed, I think, that that's not an appropriate process to follow. Correct?
There are better ways.
Absolutely. Now, can you help us from your knowledge of the Jehovah's Witnesses? As I understand it, those procedures are generated in part because of the structure of the organisation. Correct?
Yes.
How do they go about solving that problem and responding better to those who allege they've been sexually abused?
And my understanding is that this practice is happening now, but there will, I'm sure, be other people who can speak to it. But from my perspective, they solve it by allowing a person who wants to come forward to have a support person with them to speak to an elder. And if they would prefer to, I mean, there are some people who want to confront the person who abused them.
Oh, there are some who do, but there's many who don't.
Absolutely.
And many don't want to be in the same room as the person who assaulted them.
Or the same building.
That's right.
So, you know, from my perspective, I think the maximum number of choices that you can give to allow the person to speak in the way that's most comfortable for them. Everything from where do you meet to who's there to how is the information taken down. So I would say the maximum number of choices within their structure, that would probably look like giving them the option to write the letter, allowing someone else to speak who has listened to their testimony, having someone with them if they want to, or not meeting with anybody at all but submitting it in a letter.
Because I understand it, what you're talking about runs into conflict with the Bible as the Jehovah's Witnesses understand it.
It may with the piece of having more than one witness.
Well, more than that, confronting your alleged wrongdoer is another component of it, isn't it?
I think that they allow the letter to act as the confrontation. That someone's reading it, it's the words of the person, and that person's being confronted.
Well, these are things that you think, but you can't give us a document that identifies it, can you?
I believe that in the, I'll have to see the statements, but I believe that in the statements that were provided by the director of the legal office and the director of the service desk.
Now, how do we overcome the problem that your allegation won't be accepted if there isn't another witness?
That's from the internal process. That's a piece that's still going to be problematic for someone who doesn't have another witness.
Which is going to be the case for many sexual assault cases, isn't it?
It is.
How do we deal with that?
That's a tough one.
Because for those who've been abused and traumatised, a complaint which they're required to make, which is then not found in their favour, has a potential to further traumatise, doesn't it?
It is. It is.
I mean, it's by no means an ideal place for someone's psychological well-being to be placed, is it?
It's true.
I'd like to move on, Dr. Applewhite, to the second issue that you address, or issue 4, as it's termed on page 7 of your report, which concerns information regarding the systems, policies and procedures in place within the church and the society, that's the Watchtower Society, to prevent child sexual abuse within the church. And as I understand the report, your conclusions on that issue are set out in, and therefore your opinions are set out in paragraphs 45 and 46, is that right?
Yes.
And the facts and assumptions on which you base that are set out in the preceding paragraphs 37 to 44.
Yes.
And just identifying the opinion in 45, you say, in my opinion, Jehovah's Witnesses were well in advance of other religious organizations in providing educational materials to parents and families. So I understand by your use of the...
Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like, maybe even comment. If you watch it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.